Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Renault Megane car. Technique: the Megane's construction is no different from the simplest compacts on the market. The suspension is McPherson struts at the front and a classic torsion beam at the rear. The front wishbones are fully regenerated. You can replace the pin or bushings. The rear wheels feature a solution typical of the French, i.e. brake discs integrated with bearings. The steering gear is hydraulically assisted. Engines: as I mentioned, the range of engines in the Megane is huge, but of course not all were offered at the same time. In this respect, cars can be divided into those up to about 2012, 2013 and later. The same applies to diesels, although here this division is not so important. All meet the Euro 5 standard and only one was without a DPF filter, although it was available for an additional fee. However, cars registered after September 2015 should have the Euro 6 standard entered. The most important changes that have taken place over the years are the debuts of two engines. In 2012, during the first facelift, the 1.2 TCE petrol engine with direct injection debuted, and it gradually replaced the naturally aspirated 1.6. In addition to these engines, there were also the less popular 1.4 TCE, until 2013, the naturally aspirated 2.0, only with CVT transmission, and several versions of the 2.0 TCE powering various sporty and sports versions. It was mainly because of them that the number of engines used in Megane was so large. But more about that in the next chapter. Meanwhile, the diesel range now includes the 1.6 DCI, which replaced the 1.9 DCI offered until 2012. In addition, under the hood we will find the 1.5 DCI and the highly regarded 2.0 DCI diesels. Below is a list of engines divided into those before and after the facelift. I consider the facelift period to be 2012-2013, depending on the nomenclature, year of premiere, sale or production. The engines were coupled with manual gearboxes. Apart from the 1.6 16V variant with 101 horsepower and the weaker 1.5 DCI diesels, these were 6-speed gearboxes. 5-speed gearboxes were offered only in the early versions with little power. From automatics, we can mention the CVT transmission, which found its place under the hood of the Megane with a naturally aspirated 2.0 engine, or the DCT dual-clutch transmission, which was installed in the 130 horsepower 1.2 TCE and 1.5 DCI variants. Classic automatics installed in 2.0 DCI engines, known from larger Renault models, among others, work well. More about transmissions in the chapter on faults. Which petrol engine to choose? People who want to buy a car to drive and not worry about anything in particular should focus on the most popular 1.6 16V petrol engine, designation K4M. It has a timing belt, hydraulic valve clearance adjustment, and tolerates driving on LPG well. Average petrol consumption is about 8L 100 km. Performance is average. It was used in many Renault models and was also installed in the earlier generation of Megane. Some claim that the more powerful 110 HP version is already a Nissan engine, the lesser-rated H4M. But this is not true. The Japanese unit has a power of 115 HP and was installed in other models, including Dacia. The main area to focus on is the timing drive with the variable valve timing gear, which needs to be replaced regularly every 100 to 120,000 kilometers. The price of a replacement set is about $250. At the same time, the upper part of the engine should be sealed. The second very good petrol engine is the more powerful 2-liter turbo, although this is a rather rare engine variant, and the cars hold their price well. I have treated the TCE designation, which appeared a bit later in this text quite generally, without a clear division, because there is no strict division between engines called turbo and TCE. It is only a matter of nomenclature, without exception. These are Renault F4R units known for their great durability and reliability. This engine also works well on gas. Average petrol consumption is about 9L 100 kilometers, but with very good dynamics. This is the second engine that can be called a sure thing, and at the same time the car will not lose its value for some time. If you care about dynamics, this is the drive for you. The rarest petrol engine is a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine with CVT. This is already an M4R engine with a timing chain. There is no hydraulic valve adjustment here, so installing LPG is not recommended. And this is important because it is the most fuel-hungry engine in relation to performance, over 9L 100 kilometers. You have to watch out for timely oil changes and quality. The engine is durable, has a good timing drive, and is one of the few problematic ones. The CVT transmission is a bigger problem. Even if you buy a car in good condition, it doesn't mean it will stay that way. More in the faults section. A characteristic feature of the 2.0 CVT model is its rich equipment, often with light upholstery. It was often installed in the Coupe and Grand Tour versions. This version is intended for someone who wants a petrol Megane with an automatic at all costs, a better choice than the 1.2 with an automated gearbox. A slightly controversial choice will be the 1.2 TCE engine, about which opinions are divided. The engine has a turbocharger and direct injection. The timing chain is driven, but it is no more durable than the belt in the 1.6 engine. You also have to consider the oil consumption, which plagued this engine, but not every model. The timing drive suffered mainly because of this, because many people ran the engine to a state where it ran out of oil. All the more so, the chain was not lubricated enough, due to the fact that only some parts of the units were affected by the problems. Not everyone will have a bad opinion of it. With such a large selection, I do not recommend this engine, but I do not discourage it either. The last petrol is the 1.4 TCE, which, despite appearances, is not entirely related to the 1.2 TCE. The main difference between them is the power supply. Here we have multi-point indirect injection. It is plagued by problems with oil consumption, but this phenomenon occurs less frequently than in the 1.2 TCE. It also has a timing chain, but of greater durability than the 1.2 and cheaper, approximately. Average fuel consumption is slightly below 8L 100 kilometers, and dynamics are good. A rather controversial topic is the installation of LPG installations, although many users are satisfied. In my opinion, this is the optimal engine for this car, and there is no shortage of such versions on the market. Although there are fewer than the 1.2 TCE and significantly fewer than the 1.6 16V, however, it is not the best engine. If you can accept worse dynamics, choose the 1.6 16 volts, and if you care about performance, then the 2.0 TCE. It is also worth mentioning that almost all TCE engines have dual-mass flywheels. It all depends on the specific engine variant and the manufacturer of the parts. They do not wear out excessively, but when buying a car with a mileage of over 250,000 kilometers, you have to reckon with the risk of failure. Which diesel to choose? As many as 4 diesel engines can cause quite a mess, but the vast majority are 1.5 DCI units over 70%. This is a good, refined design with a durable injection system, and with more frequent oil changes, no problems with the turbocharger and bearings. This engine almost always comes with a dual-mass flywheel and DPF filter. The biggest advantage of the smallest diesel is fuel consumption from 5 to 5.5 L 100 kilometers, regardless of the version. For people who care about dynamics, I recommend variants over 100 horsepower, but most of all other engines. The 90 horsepower engine will work well on short distances, for city driving but not necessarily on long routes. Concerns about the durability of the injection system are justified, and the injectors themselves are not the cheapest, but the 1.5 DCI is within the average for such engines. The same applies to other parts such as the turbocharger, dual-mass flywheel, and other elements of the power supply system. The timing belt is used to drive. Maintaining this engine is relatively cheap because it is a well-known and popular unit on the market. The situation will be slightly worse with the 1.6 DCI engine, which, although it has a good reputation, its parts are significantly more expensive. Even the timing chain. This diesel has a more advanced exhaust gas cleaning system, so any faults in this area will cause errors. In rare cases, the head of this unit cracks, caused by DPF filter clogging. Fuel consumption with this engine is about 5.5 L 100 kilometers, but the dynamics are clearly better than with the 1.5. Interestingly, this engine was designed to meet the Euro 6 standard, but Renault withdrew sales of this model right after it came into force. It is the successor to the 1.9 DCI unit, which was used in this model until 2012 and is considered very durable. It is also the cheapest to service, although fuel consumption is slightly higher, approximately 6 L 100 kilometers, and its dynamics are not inferior to the smaller, more modern 1.6. The most valued diesel unit in Megane is 2.0 DCI. An additional advantage of having this engine is power from 150 HP upwards and good automatic transmissions. The French compact equipped with this engine is a rocket and at the same time economical, approximately 6 L 100 kilometers. Although rarely seen, these more powerful versions with 163 HP were offered as GT. There are no major reservations about the engine. It happens that after a greater mileage, the bearings may wear out a bit and need to be replaced. But this is mainly in engines lubricated with incorrect or degraded oil. What goes wrong or typical faults? 5-speed manual gearboxes are definitely less durable than 6-speed ones. After a longer mileage, the bearings in them rumble, and sometimes the synchronizers wear out. This is solely due to neglect of the oil. However, in 6-speed gearboxes, these elements are much more durable, and repairs are rarely necessary. Another delicate transmission is the CVT continuously variable transmission mounted to the 2-liter, naturally aspirated engine. Served with care, frequent oil changes, and not abused, it will easily last over 200,000 kilometers. But if you want to drive dynamically, this is not the automatic. First, you will quickly destroy it, and second, its performance is comparable to the weaker 1.6 and manual gearbox. Potentially, repairs to DCT gearboxes fitted to 1.2 and 1.5 units may be a major expense. These are Getrag gearboxes with dry clutches of a rather delicate design, and there is still the risk of failure of the gearshift mechanism itself. It is not worth it. The only automatic transmission that you can't have any major reservations about is the one fitted to the 2.0 DCI engine. However, you shouldn't forget about its proper servicing. You should also be aware that the engine has the potential to increase its power through chip tuning, but the automatic transmission doesn't really like it. It should come as no surprise that Renault Megane suffers from minor and more serious electrical faults. Ventilation fans, instrument panels, some digital break down, and users have to get used to the digital fuel gauge for a long time. Many cars have had their brake light on the tailgate replaced, and the rear lights may not work due to damage to the wires in the rubber connecting the tailgate to the body. In the clutch control system, there are leaks around the actuator at the clutch pedal. This is the same hydraulic fluid as in the brake system. We will learn about too low a fluid level from the onboard computer. This may be a warning light indicating a failure of the brake system, anti-skid system, or engine. It is not worth ignoring them, and at least then it is worth checking the brake fluid level. The bodywork is generally well protected against corrosion, but there are some poor reviews about rigidity. Fleet cars often have cracked paint, especially on the roof, or torn doorstop mounting points. The sills, which are the only element poorly protected against corrosion, do not stand the test of time. The edges of the fenders are also rusting, rubbed by the plastic wheel arches. However, in older copies or those with higher mileage, there are foci on the bodywork. This is due to Renault's use of a thin layer of zinc, which is easy to damage, and underneath it we already have normally rusting sheet metal. Nevertheless, Megane does not struggle with serious problems in this area, especially in the chassis. Another body defect is the clogging of drains in the front part, near the engine bulkhead. If they are completely clogged, water will get into the cabin. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know any problems with this car that I didn't mention, be sure to write about them in the comments.